This episode of Straight Outta Health IT is brought to you by Welling, your trusted partner connecting healthcare organizations, data, and innovation for a healthier community. Welling helps healthcare providers navigate complex challenges, from analytics and AI to workforce solutions and community health impact. Because at Welling, we believe when healthcare is connected, everyone thrives. Learn more at wellinkcommunity.com.
Straight Outta Health IT, the mic stays surgical. Christopher Cunny moves vertical, purposeful. Strategist with the vision, breaking every system's cage. Guests unfiltered, flipping chapters every page. Industry talk raw, no sugar, no varnish. From policies to tech, the convo ain't tarnished. Blueprints unfold, the future in the dialogue. Cutting through the static sharp like a monologue. Change makers in the building.
Welcome back to Straight Outta Health IT, the podcast where we cut through the noise, challenge the status quo, and get real about what's actually going on to transform healthcare. I am your host, Christopher Cunny, Managing Partner of IoTech Consulting, CTO for Ask Me Your MD, and proud host of what Straight Health has called their 2025 Podcast of the Year, Straight Outta Health IT. So let's jump right into this conversation because I'm so excited to have this gentleman on the show. And we've been talking for quite some time. And the stars finally aligned, and I have him here. So I don't want to waste time talking about my accolades. Let's talk about what he's doing to transform healthcare. So let me ask you, I call him my tribe. Let me ask you something. If your hospital could stop a claim from getting denied before it ever got submitted, what would you do? What if your revenue cycle team could predict write-offs before they actually happen? Not next quarter, not next month, not right, but right now in real time. What if AI just didn't tell you what went wrong yesterday, but actually what went out today and fixed it before it actually went out, right? How exciting would that be? And what impact would that have on the bottom line for the organization? That's just not a vision statement. That's not just a pitch deck. That's really what's happening in hospitals across the country. And my guest today is a person who is actually turning that concept into a real reality. So we're going to go deep today, on what I believe is one of the most consequential, misunderstood areas of healthcare operations, and that is revenue cycle management. And we're going to look at it through the eyes of technology, and how technology is actually reshaping that through this amazing thing called Agentic AI. And who better to have on the program today than a gentleman and his team that are actually leading the way and using Agentic AI to address the challenges that exist in rev cycle management. Jeff Hatfield, he is the co-founder and CEO of 4 Points Health, a healthcare technology company focused on transforming revenue cycle and operational workflows through the use of agentic AI and intelligent automation. Jeff is the creator of the Agentic Claims Integrity System, or ACIS, a platform that combines predictive analytics and autonomous agents to proactively predict and prevent denials and write-offs, reduce administrative burden, and improve financial outcomes for hospitals, offering a 10x, again, let me repeat, a 10x or greater return on investment. His work centers around moving healthcare AI from retrospective insights to real-time execution, with a strong emphasis on explainable models, governance, and operational trust. He regularly works with rural hospitals, large healthcare systems, and academic medical institutions in helping them navigate the complex payer and EHR environments. Welcome to Straight Outta Health IT, Jeff Hatfield.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. Great to be here.
Happy to have you, man. Excited to have this conversation with you and look forward to jumping into the meat and the potatoes of this. But before we do that, I wanted the audience to know, actually, who is this guy? I met Jeff, quite honestly, at a bar. It
was a bar at the conference.
That's right, pre-conference, but it was at a bar. And we began having a very lively conversation about what each of our organizations are doing. And I immediately fell in love with this guy and the work that he's doing in this space. So he's got a story, and I want him to go back to the beginning. Now, how did you end up in health tech? Because, let's be honest, everybody doesn't wake up, today and say, I'm going to fix rev cycle. Right? Walk us through that journey and how it got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I've been in tech consulting my entire career, so that goes back a ways. But it started. My wife had breast cancer at 35, and extremely aggressive and very scary. We went through the first round, went to remission. We thought everything was great, and then it came back and with a vengeance. And I was pissed.
Exactly.
I was just the first time round. I just kind of let the oncologist and everybody kind of take care of it. Then the second time, I was like, I've got to do something. And you're sitting there, and it's terminal, and you don't have much time, and then you're sitting in a hospital, and you just feel like nothing's happening.
Exactly.
We'll go get labs or do something like that, and it'll be 5 days later before you talk to the oncologist, and I couldn't stand it. So I kind of took over. I kind of, or as her main.
You have to be your own advocate. You have to be the advocates for your loved one.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't like like I said, the team, everybody was fantastic, but stuff was just for me to wait for. So I would go down. I got to know the lab techs. I would go down after she had, this is just one example, and I'd get to know them, and they would explain to me what they saw. I would take that. I'd go back upstairs. I'd go find the oncologist. I'd go to the nursing station, knew everybody, and they'd say, well, she's down in this other room. And so I'd stand outside. And she'd come out, and she's like, I'm really busy. I got this. I said, great, let's talk while we walk. I'd say, here's what, what do you think? Should we do this? Should we do this? And, so I was cutting, time from like a week down to like a matter of hours. To where we could make decisions and get things moving. Now, granted, at the end of the day, it I don't know if it helped or not. Made me feel a lot better. But what happened afterwards, and she died. I guess about she had it for 3 years, and then she and I kind of reflected back on it and thinking, wow, that the behind the scenes stuff in the hospitals and healthcare is just horrible. And I knew that the technology was almost there, but from that moment on, I made it my mission to do whatever I possibly can to improve healthcare operations. And so it started at the time, big data was the thing. This was 25 years ago. And so I got into that, and that progressed into analytics, did a lot of work on predictive analytics for chronic and so on. But even then, and my goal was always, just like it was with her in that situation, reduce the time to treatment, improve the patient outcome.
Exactly.
We also then start getting into, reducing costs, increasing revenue, provider well-being, the whole quadruple aim. Those 4 points. In fact, that's where the name of the company comes from. 4 points. It's pieces to.
I was going to ask you that you actually answered one of my interview questions.
So I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. I was wondering where the name came from. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So even though we had data taken care of, we had great analytics, we still were not seeing the needle move to where we're actually having impact. And it occurred to us that even with that piece, there's still so many manual steps that happen on the front end and the back end once you have the data from and the model telling you things. And so we started tackling that. And that's when, and this was way before robotic process automation, thing. But so we got into that, and that was probably about 10 or 12 years ago, and it's progressed to where now we look at everything as if you're going to have automation, it needs to be intelligent. And that means you need to leverage AI, machine learning, all those other things. And so that's what we've done. Now, we've been doing intelligent automation for several years. It's just now the big buzzword you mentioned, agentic AI. It's the same thing. It's where you have the results of the AI, but then you have the agents, which are the automations that's actually taking those next actions and making it real. I go to a lot of conferences, and there's no shortage of AI conversations going on.
Yes, every conference these days.
Very, very few are able to turn that into ROI.
Right.
And the reason is that the AI, in my opinion, just becomes another type of data. Itself, right? It's like 80 or 90% of the data in a hospital ever gets used actively.
Exactly.
So that's where we come in, and that's what brings us to kind of where we are now, predicting and preventing denials.
That's great. Well, first of all, my condolences go out to you in the passing of your wife, and sounds like she was a fighter, and you obviously were a major advocate for her during her journey. And you unfortunately have to turn tests into testimonies, right? And this led you in a space that now you're affecting so many other lives in a very positive way as well too. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Her passing is not in vain by far. Well, thank you so much for being transparent and sharing that experiences and your observations and your breaking point. What got you to the place where you said, hey, I need to now step in and figure out how I can help fix this situation. And so talk a little bit more about, 4 Points Health. Give the audience kind of a full picture. I usually do the pitch thing on the back end. We're going to do it on the front end today.
Great. All right.
Tell us what you guys do. How do you serve, your clients, what gaps in the market you're addressing, and then we'll delve into the meat and potatoes of this whole rev cycle,
sure.
environment.
Yeah. We started 4 Points. We're very small. We're still new. It's only about 3 years ago that we actually started.
Right.
We started with
that's a lifetime in health tech these days.
Well, you're not wrong. Yeah. And we did it with the sole intention of getting to intelligent automation. I worked with several companies. This will be my third, kind of startup in terms of automation for healthcare. First time on our own. Yeah, we just weren't seeing the industry going in the right direction. Everybody was kind of locked in on the RPA, and RPA was great. It works fantastic in a lot of industries. Healthcare, no, it's not. Yeah. It's not as
effective.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's so many variables and so on. You've got to put that data together with it and use the intelligence and the analytics. So we're doing that in rev cycle, as you mentioned, but that same model that we're using, we're now taking that over to the clinical space as well.
So interesting.
For areas where there's a lot of manual processing that's going on, and it's just not effective. So we're looking at care management, another area, and then discharge management, because you can think of all the different hands that are in discharge management or care, and all the handoffs and everything else. It's messy. So that's what we're doing.
That's great. And as a former patient myself, going through the process, and CIO as well, understanding the technologies behind that, we definitely have quite a bit of ways to go to continue to streamline these processes. I remember when coming out of the hospital, trying to get discharged, how long it took for that process to take place, because the systems were so antiquated, and the processes were not as efficient as they could be. And to your point, it still was a tremendous amount of manual processes that had to take place in order for that to happen.
And so our target there in discharge management is to reduce the early readmissions.
Right. Exactly.
We can zero in on that. It's better for the patient. It's better for the hospital. It's better for everybody. So we tend to pick within a broad area of hospital operations. What is the key target we want to drill into? If we do that, then we see all the other good results follow along with it. But I think
that makes sense.
I think a lot of and I've heard this on some of the other guests have been the same thing. The technology's there, and healthcare needs it so badly, but
absolutely,
healthcare has grown up in just such decentralization, such interoperability issues that I see a lot of technologies that come out focus on one of those. So they're like point solutions. There isn't really much out there, even with the EHRs, that where you can say, okay, it's covering everything. And
That's right.
And when we talk about processes going back and forth, I think that's where a lot of it breaks down.
Yeah. I think you have to look at it holistically. I did want to take a step back for, maybe the one or two people who are listening to who don't have a good understanding or a clear understanding of what this whole process is around rev cycle and the challenges that exist. So I wanted to just kind of give a high-level overview for the listeners and then get you to comment as well, too. Here's really where we are as an industry. Rev cycle management has always been the financial engine of healthcare, but it's also been one of the most broken, to our former comments we've been making, the most costly and the most operationally exhausting systems in the entire healthcare enterprise. We're talking about a function that actually impacts every part of the clinical encounter, every payer relationship, every dollar that flows in and out of that healthcare system is driven through the rev cycle management process. And unfortunately, the numbers tell an interesting story about the U.S. healthcare system. It's estimated that we lose about $260 billion every year to claim denials alone. That's it for a second. $260 billion and what the impact would be in healthcare if we could recover that. And roughly 65% of most denied claims don't ever get reworked, and you probably have even more accurate numbers, but they're just written off in many cases. That's a tremendous amount of revenue. Again, $262 billion is just gone just because we don't have the resources to rework it, right?
Yeah, I've seen numbers as high as 80%.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. So 60 to 80% just don't even get the opportunity to try to recover that revenue. And that's not a technology process, but it is a systemic failure at the intersection of people, process, and technology, right?
Right.
And so here's where it gets real interesting in my mind. For the last decade, the industry's answer to the problem has been, to your point earlier, kind of reports, retrospective data, KPIs, kind of a look back on what took place. And that's a step in the right direction, because before we weren't even doing that very well. But data is powerful, right? Data tells you exactly what you want, but you want that data to be actionable data, right? Real-time data, and more importantly, data that then can be acted on so you can prevent the problems from happening as well, too. And that's where, the possibilities of agentic AI come into play. I want to be precise here, too, because this term is getting thrown around a lot, in the industry. Agentic AI is not a chatbot, it's not Copilot that waits for you to ask it a question. Agentic AI is autonomous, goal-directed, capable of taking actions based on insights, not just generating output. And in the context of rev cycle management, that means AI that just doesn't flag a potential denial, to your point earlier, but it actually intervenes, right? And the workflow to prevent it. And AI doesn't just service the problem, but it actually executes on the response. So as I kind of wrap up my commentary here, we're in the early stages of this shift, right? But the trajectory in my mind remains pretty clear. There was a 2024 survey that came out by the Healthcare Financial Management Association, HFMA, that found that more than 70% of hospital system CFOs identified AI-driven automation as a top strategic priority for them for rev cycle over the next 3 years or more. But yet only fewer than 20% have actually reported the implementation of AI-generated types of technologies to address rev cycle operational issues today. So there's a huge gap that exists still between the strategic priorities and the operational realities. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, why is there still this gap in healthcare, and why is it that innovators like yourself are still not? They should be beating down your door, right? You shouldn't be knocking on their door. They should be knocking on your door and say, hey, we need that product. Why do you think there's still this gap that exists today?
Well, I think the AI piece is easy. The automation piece is hard.
Right.
And it goes back to what I said just a few minutes ago, the interoperability challenges still. And I think it's also just a mindset of what people are used to. So, for example, we have clients And when we talk about our automations, they say, let's automate denial management.
Sure.
Well, wouldn't it be better if we automated denial prevention? And
exactly.
like,
Let's prevent the denial from happening.
Yeah, I said, look, if we just we go upstream and we start fixing where those problems are, your backlog of denials is just gonna tank. It's just gonna go away. So it's things like that you see all the time. And I think another part of it is there's an over reliance on EHRs.
Sure.
EHRs do a fantastic job, managing patient accounts, tracking things, but they're not a quality control. You look at the top 3 or 4 and look at none of them have a true quality control measure in there, and they vary differently, but they also have a ton of workarounds.
That's right.
I was working with a client early last year, and they wanted us to fix their credit balances. They have like a daily average of 18 and 19 million credit balances.
Sure.
Great. Let's go take a look. When we opened up their EHR, they've got 830 different work queues, different groups. And what had happened was they were splitting it up, alphabetically. One person takes this group, another, or any exception. They say, okay, well, let's just put it in this other work queue. And so like that, it becomes very, very difficult for someone to say, okay, how do we handle this? Where's that standard there that we start working on and start pulling through?
And I think also probably how do we do to your point, the quality control, understand what's the systemic cause of all these exceptions that are happening, and starting to address those, because they're just heads down working the problem and not thinking about how to solve it so it doesn't happen again.
Right. Yeah. And back, to what, AI is easy. So there's a lot of companies and solutions out there that will predict denials.
Right.
That's really taken off. And then that's great. But we talk to people who say, yeah, I'm using ABC's denial predictor. So, hey, how's that? They said it's horrible. They said now all the denials are, but we don't have nearly the people to go and work those. So
exactly.
Still thinking of on the back end. And so you look at end-to-end rev cycle. Let's say there's roughly, let's just say 20. Let's say there's 20 distinct steps from patient intake all the way to the remittance process. Right. Every single one of those, we have an automation for every single one of those steps that can eliminate the manual need, reduce errors, improve quality. You take that now, let's say a given hospital has, 6 key payers that they deal with most of these. Say the majority of their claims are going through these 6. Well, now you have to multiply those 20 steps by 6 in some instances, right? And and so it's very difficult to go from where you have no standards, you have no controls, to where you've got that level of automation that's being applied. And there's different ways that you go about doing that, but I think there's a lot of reasons, Christopher, where we're just not seeing this working yet.
And I think to your point as well, and I think some of the commentary I made earlier, and that is, the traditional model has been looking at data, once it's gone through the process, and now evaluating the challenges associated with that after the fact, versus getting ahead of it and being more proactive and saying, because we've got all this previous data, we see where the patterns are and where the issues are. Now we're going to put fixes in place to hopefully avoid those patterns from occurring for the next claim that gets processed.
Right. And I think the other side of it too is, in order for this all to work, you've got to have a closed loop system.
Sure.
So when you identify the claim, you fix it before it goes out. Once it gets to that 837, it goes out. Now you got to watch for the subsequent 835 to come back and say, okay, did we indeed fix that claim like we anticipated? Or did we miss something? And then we did, okay, great. Well, let's tweak our algorithms and let's back in. That's where the machine learning becomes critical.
That's right.
Critical. The other part of it too is very interesting. what we found is if you do that, if you develop that closed loop, now you're not taking care of denials, but you're also identifying payer behavior.
Exactly.
Very more important today than it has been with the way AI is going on both sides. Their AIs now, providers are trying to get their AI.
Sure.
It's like an arms race, right? It's
right.
But yeah, so let's say, for example, a claim is fixed through this process, and you've got like 10 claims, all of them all exactly the same. There's no reason why they shouldn't all be denied. And suddenly you find from one payer, now they started denying this. Okay, so that's a red. Okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to get some, talk to them? Do we need to check our contracts? What has to happen there? That takes some effort to put.
Takes time, takes labor, manpower. To your point, if it's not automated today.
Right. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So, which kind of leads to, I would assume, this kind of 10x ROI, right? That's a bold number. Your organization's thrown out, and I appreciate bold numbers and when they're backed up. So, walk us through how ROI is actually materialized when you implement things like Agentic AI, and what does that look like in real dollars and real operational change for an organization?
Right. Through this ACIS that you mentioned earlier, that's the acronym ACIS, we've been averaging about 65% reduction in denials.
Right.
And we've seen numbers a lot higher than that too in some cases. But the ROI comes from it. And here's a key point too. And sometimes we see this is a reason why automation and AI doesn't get embraced. People are afraid they're going to lose their jobs. Or
yeah, well, I was gonna go there with you, and the whole change management piece of that and the human dynamic. Right?
Exactly, and what we promote is we're improving productivity. Therefore, we're giving time back and allowing people to work on other more valuable things. Especially with during COVID with the huge nurse shortages that were coming up. That time was critical.
Absolutely.
And we are able to improve productivity by about 35%. You look at a large organization that can have, 500,000 of, people working in rev cycle. Those numbers add up and it's very substantial. So there's you can very easily translate that into, okay, what's the cost savings there? Then there's on the backside, it's reducing write-offs, maintaining revenue. A lot that's earlier, you said 65% of claims denials go unworked. A lot of times it's because it costs too much to work them, right? Threshold, I can't remember, I think the average might be $118 to work it, to rework the work that
to try to recover that revenue,
You got thousands and thousands of claims that are underneath that, right? And so those things add up very, very quickly. So there's that piece of it too. We also see a big reduction in the speed to cash, days outstanding. Usually 15 to 20 days will speed that up. Now, some CFOs look at that differently. Some say, well, we can't count the bottom. Well, that's if we're got enough volume, that's a pretty good number, pretty good savings.
Yeah, it can have a huge impact. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
I also wanted to comment, you mentioned the tangible financial returns, but I think there's a human return there as well too. And that is reducing some of that cognitive workload on individuals as well. They're having to spend the time and effort, sifting through these claims, redoing the research, following back up with the insurers. That can create burnout as well too. And so because of this being a very labor and intensive and repetitive task. And so I do think that, there are those kind of intangible measures that have a huge impact on employee satisfaction. Obviously, patients get a better understanding of what's going to be covered. And hospitals hopefully get access to, their revenue a lot faster, as well too. So I see all sorts of KPIs or measures that could be attributed to, the use of automation in this form or fashion.
Yeah, and it needs to be tracked, and because otherwise you don't know where to make improvements. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of reporting and a lot of KPIs. There's also areas like self pay.
Exactly.
A client right now that's got 29 million in outstanding self pay, and what happened and broke down, and up front they didn't validate, they didn't verify. We go in, we run automations, and we cut that down. And granted, they're not going to get that whole thing back, but let's just say, conservatively, if they get half of it back, well, that's a big number. So that's
huge.
That goes into it. Underpayments. There's a lot of claims that are basically written off, but the reality is that it was an underpayment, and so we can head those types of things off as well. But you're right. I love working with the clients, and when you just watch, you can see the light bulb go off, like, oh my God, you just cleared out that entire work queue. I don't have to do anything with it. And they get so excited. It's
exactly.
It's very rewarding. And
that's great.
Aside from the ROI.
Absolutely. That's great. I want to turn our attention a little bit to the health equity dimension to the story that often doesn't get talked about enough as well, specifically as it relates to rural hospitals and safety net systems. The ones that are serving some of the most vulnerable populations are disproportionately hurt by denial rates and write-offs. They don't have the administrative staff in many cases or infrastructure to, go back and, investigate and readmit those claims. They have large rates of denials and write-offs. They don't, unlike some of these large integrated delivery networks or academic institutions, they can't absorb those losses either as effectively as these organizations. So when we talk about fixing rev cycle with smarter technologies, we have to be asking ourselves, who gets access to the technology, on what terms? Because if it's not intentional about that, we're at risk kind of building a two-tiered system where well-resourced organizations can take advantage of these tools and technologies, and resource organizations fail behind. And I say, I kind of tee that up because I know your organization in particular can scale down to small and rural health systems, and obviously scale up to large integrated enterprise organizations. Talk to us a little bit about, the impact that you've seen your technology have on these most vulnerable parts of our healthcare system.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note, you and I share this background. There's some of our conversations, we've had personal experience, right? And
yes.
I grew up in Mexico, Missouri, a population of about 12,000 in the middle of Missouri. Largely farm community, right?
That's right.
The hospital I was born in, closed up. I think it's about three or 4 years ago now.
Right.
And the devastation on the community is just incredible. It serves,
absolutely.
I can't remember how many million people it served, but now they've got to go. They've got to drive far away for anything.
Sure, that's right.
Tragically, and it just, I don't know. It
can be devastating. To your point, the hospital not only obviously provides care to a community, it serves as a major economic resource for the community, for jobs, for creation of other businesses that support the hospital. And when those institutions are forced to close, it can literally devastate communities, to your point.
Yeah. And there was a lot of discussion at the last conference you and I were at. There were several, it was AI and then rural.
Right. Exactly.
That's been it. But I know a lot.
That's right.
We're talking about, really to fix rural, that you need to have, pay reimbursement. Regulations need to be changed. And I don't agree 100%. However, that's going to take some time.
Right.
These are political issues, regulatory issues. They don't happen overnight.
That's correct.
So what we're trying to do with what capabilities we have is make sure that we take the cost of this technology and we get that scaled down.
Right.
Rural hospitals can afford it.
Exactly.
And lots of different ways that we're doing that. But that's really the bottom line. These hospitals have the same problems the large hospitals had. The large hospitals can afford that technology. Rural can. So how do we make it equitable to your equity? How do we make it available?
Make it more equitable, available, affordable. Absolutely take advantage of it. Absolutely. Well, I commend you and your organization for being able to give that access to those organizations that are in those most vulnerable communities as well. I have a kind of another tough question as well too, and I'll ask it because I think it really at least matters to me. Is there a risk that AI revenue cycle tools will widen that gap for resource systems and for rural and safety hospitals? How do you make sure that these technologies are affordable? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, and you guys have kind of figured it out. How are you doing that? I mean, if that's your secret sauce, and you don't want to give all the detail, that's fine. But in broad strokes, you can talk to that. And do you see that as a potential risk as AI continues to permeate our industry? Are these less resource organizations going to be left behind the curve?
Yeah. I don't know. I worry about that too. And I mean, we're pretty far down the road. It would take someone, a while to catch up to us. So competitively, I'm fine. And
Good for you. Right.
The other side too, I always say this, hey, we can't tackle all of healthcare. If something we're doing, someone else can go do, and just that's what's going to have to happen. It's got to be more companies like 4 Points is out there doing things. But I'll say this, that there's several key things that we've done. We have, so the core automation, it's normally done by the handful of RPA platforms.
Sure.
Right? And they will typically charge for like one bot, one automation, one bot running an automation. You have to pay a yearly subscription it's all subscription. We've managed to get deals where we do it on consumption. So very small hospital that only needs 1 hour a day to run all of its pre-authorizations, for example, on an automation. That's all they have to pay for is those 60 minutes. They don't have to entire. So that's a huge drop in the cost.
Also like a utility model you use based on your need, your demand.
Right.
And you only pay for that.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is we leverage, we've got teams offshore, nearshore, got teams in India, Romania, Guatemala. Now, granted, we don't want to be sending PHI over there, but we build foundationally things that we can bring back over and then plug in data, and we'll have to do the testing and things like that here. The other part of it is we know that within, regionally, and right now we're looking state by state, and that's where you and I, we've had some conversations about Georgia Hospital Association, right?
Exactly.
The other one we're talking to in Idaho and several others, but what we're doing is if we can take, like, let's say a group of 20 rural hospitals in a state, and we can build the solution once and serve out from a central point, that is probably one of the biggest cost reductions that we can do.
Makes sense.
And I think more and more companies are going to have to, in order to solve this, I think more and more companies are going to have to start doing those types of things and figuring out, instead of it being $1 million, it's $100,000. How do we get to that point?
Absolutely. And make it scalable, to your point, and meet these organizations where they are. If you're really committed to, making changes in healthcare, you'll think about this not just as, what your bottom line is going to look like long term, but how you make this a sustainable solution that healthcare organizations can actually take full advantage of as well.
Yeah.
But the time has flown, I can't believe, we're knocking up on the end, but I do have kind of what I call my rapid fire session. I'm going to ask you kind of a series of questions, and it's kind of like your Rorschach test here.
Are you going to grade me? Do I get a score?
There's no grade on it at all. Just maybe some revelation that comes from that, through it. But hopefully, it won't be too painful for you. So we'll just go right at it. Ready?
Okay.
What's the biggest myth about AI in healthcare at RevCycle right now?
The biggest myth. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. I think the biggest myth is that you have to within RevCycle.
Within RevCycle.
That you have to use LLM, large language.
Oh, okay.
Because as a matter of fact, it's the opposite. because you start going outside, every region, every hospital kind of has their own things. You start getting very skewed, incorrect information. You start broadening that out.
Right. Interesting. I didn't know that. That's a new info for me as well. Okay, next question. What's one thing a health system CFO needs to stop doing immediately?
Stop doing. I would say stop spending money with other companies and spend it with us.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I know there's a lot there. I think I will say this. I hope I don't get in trouble for this. We see the claims going through. We see exactly what's happening.
Right.
And denials are, I don't know if it's an all-time high, but it's up above 12%.
Exactly.
Write-offs, which used to be around 5 to 6 or 7%, now suddenly down to like 1% or less than.
Right.
Now, at the same time, margins aren't going in the right direction. So that's happening. I mentioned underpayments earlier. That's a huge force. So I think CFOs, and again, well, I'm not naming any names, but so if you're ignoring things like that, you need to stop that. And you need to really dig into it.
Okay. No, good answer. Just a couple more here, and I'll let you go. Good. Yeah, one metric that tells you that ACIS is actually working.
Yeah, the number of claims that get reduced.
Okay.
And I mean, number of denials that get reduced.
Right.
That's
right. Good. The last question: one book or podcast or resource you would recommend to every health IT leader?
Book, podcast, resource. Well, your podcast, obviously.
I was going to say that's a layup right there, dude.
What a softball.
I figured you get it. But no, seriously though. Yeah.
I enjoy Vecker's.
Okay.
I get a lot of good stuff from there. Yeah. And I'll tell you, have you heard of Union Health?
I have.
Yeah, we just signed up as members. Just so for if anybody doesn't know, you might remember the advisory board, which did a lot of resource years ago. They got acquired Optum.
Exactly.
And, not too long ago, a group of leadership from Optum went and kind of I don't want to butcher this, kind of developed an advisory board.
Sure, exactly.
And man, I was just blown away at that. We went to a conference and just walked through a lot like what you and I are talking about here.
Sure.
Also, more broadly, the overall economics of it. And so I would say for any healthcare executive that's out there that's interested, I'd say Union Health. Union Health.
That's great.
Right. And if you want, I can send you any information on it. But
yeah, sure. We can always add it into the notes as well too. And I can tell you in my days as an active CIO, I used to use the advisory board quite a bit, in my education, resources, tools that they had, to help our board and our leadership understand some of these more complex issues that we're dealing with in healthcare today, especially health tech. So yeah, it's interesting to see that evolve into, now Union. So last question, I promise, very last question. If someone wanted to find out more about 4 Points and about, or you in particular, your journey, what's the best way for them to get connected?
Certainly LinkedIn. Shoot me an email, jeff.hatfield at 4 Points, FOUR Points, POINTS -health.org.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, this has been exactly the type of conversation our audience actually needs to hear, real, substantive, forward-looking and unfiltered. But before I let you go, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
No, I hope it was helpful. And I love sharing. I love talking about these types of things. And if anybody wants to know more about some of the clinical things that we're getting into, I'd be happy to share that as well. But I do have passion behind this. And, I want to do everything I possibly can. I do fully believe the more companies, more people that understand this type of thing, we're going to fix a lot of these healthcare problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, turning your tragedy into a testimony that's impacting, the broader community. We applaud you for that as well. Jeff Hatfield, co-founder and CEO of 4 Points Health, creator of ACIS, and one of the real builders in this space. Thank you so much for taking time to come out to hang out with me on Straight Outta Health IT. I really appreciate you, man.
Anytime, Christopher.
Absolutely. And so that's it, folks. Thanks for listening, family, tribe. If this episode hits you a little bit differently, you know what to do, right? Subscribe, share it with your friends, someone that needs to hear it, someone you don't even care that much about, because we can all just insights, and grow as human beings and healthcare professionals. So again, in closing, I'm Christopher Cuddy, and this has been Straight Outta Health IT. Until next time, stay innovative, stay equitable, stay straight out of health IT, and keep pushing the envelope as it comes to health innovation. We have to use these technologies to improve the quality of care. Thank you so much. Take care and God bless.
Change makers in the building, can't ignore the sound. Truth gets spilled, innovation breaking ground. Straight out of health IT, where the talk stay free. Tune in, turn up, this is where you want to be. Data-driven dreams, they decode the code. Hack the status quo, make the old ways implode. Gusts dropping gems like pockets of gold mines. Healthcare's front lines, redesigned in real time. Honey got the mic, architect of the chatter. Revolutions in the air, healthcare's new chapter. From telehealth to equity, nothing stays unseen. This is more than a podcast, it's the dream machine. The system's pulse is beating to the sound. Voices of change tearing